To try and make sense of the significance of this AI Action Summit, I want to go across now to Paris. Joining us is Martin Tisné, Chief Executive at AI Collaborative. He's the envoy of this AI Action Summit and is involved in bringing the summit and its deliberations together. So thank you very much, Mr. Tisné, for joining us. There's a lot of interest in India in this AI summit, given the fact that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is co-chairing it along with President Macron, and the huge amount of interest around developments in artificial intelligence. Can you give everyone watching at this time a sense of the nature of the deliberations and the outcomes you hope to achieve during this summit?
Thank you for having me. I think it's an incredibly important moment in artificial intelligence. We've seen this over the past few weeks. And really what we're trying to show with this particular summit are the incredible opportunities that can be unlocked by artificial intelligence and how different countries coming together can really chart a collaborative path for an approach for artificial intelligence that really serves the people, serves the public, and improves lives. So we're very excited to be hosting this event here today and the closing session tomorrow.
We're also joined from Paris, from the convention center itself, by Hemant Taneja. Hemant is the Chief Executive, Managing Director at General Catalyst. It's a prominent US venture capital fund. He's one of the attendees along with several of the top tech titans at this Paris summit. Mr. Taneja, welcome. You know, we're hearing from the organizers, but from the industry and participator lens, what's your sense of the deliberations, the importance of the conversations, and the key end outcomes you hope to achieve here?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. There's a lot of excitement here in Paris at the AI Action Summit. And I think the key objective for President Macron to convene this gathering was about creating conditions for Europe to lead in AI. And as you know, any time you think about creating an ecosystem under new technology and a transformation, you end up having to bring stakeholders together from policy, capital, and business and get them to collaborate. So I think the importance of this moment is that Europe seems to be waking up to the fact that they need to lead in AI. They realize that creating an innovation and ecosystem, an adoption ecosystem for AI is going to be necessary for their companies to lead globally. And it seems that all the leadership that has convened here is focused on saying, let's treat this as an important moment to catalyze that ecosystem.
Mr. Tisné, while I was at Davos in the third week of January, a lot of the conversations were around European firms needing to take more risk around AI, but the backlash was against over-regulation and the fact that the European Union had way too stringent regulations on data, on privacy, on AI, and whether that stifled innovation. We're seeing China have a very different approach. The US has largely been hands-off, which is also why there's been so much innovation happening there, Martin Tisné. So do you see that view really change in terms of how Europe is looking at regulating artificial intelligence and whether there's been too much regulation stifling innovation?
So thank you for asking the question. This summit is not about regulation, it's about building. And the focus here is really on three things. It's an action summit. One of them, Europe has incredible resources when it comes to data. Just to remind your viewers, one of the most incredible innovations when it comes to public interest in AI was the creation of AlphaFold by Google DeepMind. And that was based on a public data set, including the protein data bank. So one of our big efforts here is increase the accessibility and the availability of data sets to power AI. I think we have big focus on compute and innovation around compute. We have far fewer innovations around data and how to access it to make it available in ways that are privacy safeguarding and safe. That's the first one. The second one is around open source. Europe has long been a champion of open source AI, but open source AI won't be used by consumers and won't be used for the public interest in a vacuum. It needs a resilient ecosystem. So part of what we'll be doing is the announcement of this major deliverable current AI tomorrow, which is really focused on making the open source AI ecosystem more resilient and ensuring that it's as seamless to use as a proprietary ecosystem. And the third one is really around auditing and accountability and ensuring that these tools are safe and involving consumers and citizens in using them. So I'm excited about the potential. The role of Europe is important, but this is also a global summit. And we're working very closely with different governments, including obviously the government of India, and also on the public interest side, Nigeria, Morocco, Chile, and many others.
Hemant, you come from Silicon Valley. There, the approach to regulating AI is very different from what Europe has seen. What's your sense of trying to find a middle ground? We've also seen recently a Chinese company come out with a DeepSeek model that's really upended a lot of what Silicon Valley thought were calculations in terms of how much it would cost to run these AI models. So where do you see this innovation really coming from, given the nature of regulations around AI in Europe?
Yeah, so if you look at the environment in the US, there's a strong belief that US needs to lead in AI and have a light regulatory framework so that you can accelerate innovating those technologies. Obviously, if you look at the progress that China is making with DeepSeek, that's a clear indication that US needs to do more of that. Europe needs to do the same. I think Europe does need to lean into open source, as was being mentioned. It does need to create an environment so that its local infrastructure around AI can thrive. Because otherwise, obviously, you want the European companies to adopt AI, but if that adopted AI is being provided by other parts of the world, then those productivity gains are actually going to fly out of the continent. So I think Europe needs to do the same thing so that local companies providing infrastructure, technologies, open source can thrive and get access to the local market and benefit Europe. I think India, in my opinion, needs to do the same thing. Each of these regions needs to become more resilient in its own AI capabilities.
Mr. Tisné, the new American Vice President, J.D. Vance, is in Paris. This is his first international summit after becoming Vice President. And then there's also the Chinese threat, the growing nationalism around technology, around GPUs, around semiconductors, around AI technology. So where does Europe and what's your sense of President Macron's own position on this growing tech nationalism, which seems to be dividing the world into two tech camps?
So I won't speak on behalf of the president. I mean, from my perspective, and in being one of the envoys helping set up the summit, I think that what we've seen with DeepSeek is really the proof of something we've been saying for a while, which is the AI market is shape-shifting. We're at an incredibly exciting time, right? It could go two different ways. I had the fortune of being present at Bletchley Park at the AI Safety Summit in early November 2023. At the time, really the focus was on proprietary models and on open source being a threat to safety, right? You fast forward a year and a few months, and you see that this market is not necessarily one which is really focused on proprietary models where you pay to have access, but one which could be much more open, and the value then lies in distribution and services. And this is really where we want to push it. From my perspective, being the envoy in charge of public interest AI, I think there's a huge amount of innovations to improve people's lives that will be unlocked by open models, by better data, and by really engaging with those who are the closest to the problems we seek to solve, be that curing cancer. Just to finish, I've heard so many politicians in my time talking about curing cancer. Now we really have the tools to be able to do it. And that will take the data, the openness, and working very closely with those oncologists and those patients to make it happen. I'm excited about that. I think this is an incredible moment in the market for this nascent technology, and I'm optimistic about the future.
Thanks, Martin Tisné, for joining us. One last question to Hemant, Taneja, because this big debate rages in India about why China could pull off a DeepSeek-like model, and Indian companies and engineers were busy making use cases rather than try and attack the foundational models. Now we've seen IT Minister Ashwani Vaishnav announced, and he told me in an interview recently in the next 1 year, he hopes to get at least one model. He says he's working on 4 going. You've looked at investing in several Indian startups. What's your view of the AI ecosystem in India? What do you think we're doing right? What more do you think India needs to do?
India clearly has a talent to be a leader in the AI arms race, if you will. From my standpoint, the focus in India has been much more about how do we adopt AI and have it be a leverage point for the economy. But I do think for long-term competitiveness of India's businesses globally, it does need to invest in its own AI infrastructure and models and capabilities. So I do believe, if you see what's happening with DeepSeek, if you see what's happening in the US and now in Europe vis-a-vis the AI Action Summit, India needs to create a similar rally internally and activate this technology community to go invest in models that, frankly, are built there, are cost competitive, respect the cultural nuances of the country itself and the way these things get adopted, and do it in a way that it's going to be global market leaders.
Okay, this is a conversation we can go on endlessly about, but for the time being, for stepping out of the meetings that you were in and joining us, Martin Tisné and Hemant Taneja, thank you very much. All the best for tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.